A young man found brutally slain in his own home, nearly 30 stab wounds, a slit throat, and a gunshot to the head. The killer? His ex-girlfriend, a woman who claimed it was self-defense. But as investigators peeled back the layers of their twisted love story, a shocking truth emerged, one of obsession, jealousy, and a calculated murder. This is the story of Jodi Arias and the brutal killing of Travis Alexander, a crime so shocking it captivated the world. The story of Jodi Arias and Travis Alexander began like any passionate romance, filled with excitement, desire, and the promise of something special. But beneath the surface, their relationship was far from perfect. It was a connection fueled by obsession, jealousy, and manipulation, spiraling toward a violent and tragic end. Travis Alexander was the kind of man people admired. A successful salesman, a devout Mormon, and a motivational speaker, he exuded confidence and charm. He had worked hard to build his life, overcoming a troubled childhood marked by hardship and neglect. By his early 30s, he had everything he wanted: a promising career, a strong circle of friends, and a bright future ahead. Then he met Jodi Arias. Jodi was captivating, strikingly beautiful, artistic, and intelligent. She had an intensity about her that drew people in, but there was something more beneath her charm. She and Travis crossed paths at a work convention in Las Vegas in 2006. The attraction was instant, electric. Within days, they were inseparable. Despite living in different states, Travis in Arizona and Jodi in California, their connection deepened quickly, fueled by late-night phone calls, secret rendezvous, and a whirlwind romance. But there was one problem. Travis was deeply committed to his Mormon faith, and Jodi was not. He believed in saving himself for marriage, yet their relationship was intensely physical, something he struggled to reconcile with his religious beliefs. Jodi, eager to keep him, converted to Mormonism, was baptized, and pledged to follow the faith. To outsiders, it seemed like devotion, but to those who knew her well, it was clear. Jodi was willing to do whatever it took to stay in Travis's life. Their relationship was volatile. They broke up and got back together countless times. Travis saw red flags: her jealousy, her unpredictability, her unwillingness to let go, but he was drawn to her in ways he couldn't fully understand. She showered him with affection, professed her undying love, and gave him everything he wanted. But when things didn't go her way, her sweet demeanor would shift into something darker. Friends of Travis began to notice the warning signs. Jodi was always around, too much. She showed up unannounced, hacked into his social media accounts, and read his emails. She monitored his every move, making sure he wasn't seeing other women. When Travis tried to pull away, she pulled him back in, using seduction, guilt, and manipulation to keep their toxic cycle going. By early 2008, Travis had finally had enough. He wanted to move on. He was seeing other women, focusing on his career, and planning for a future without Jodi. But Jodi wasn't ready to let go. Her obsession deepened, and her jealousy consumed her. If she couldn't have Travis, no one could. What began as a passionate love affair was about to turn into one of the most infamous murder cases in modern history. And in just a few months, Travis Alexander would be dead, brutally slain in his own home. As 2008 unfolded, Travis Alexander was ready to leave Jodi Arias behind for good. He had spent months trying to break free from the toxic cycle of their relationship, but Jodi would not let go. He had started dating other women, searching for someone who aligned with his values and long-term goals. He wanted marriage, stability, and a family, things he knew Jodi could never truly offer him. But Jodi wasn't just a jealous ex-girlfriend. She was an obsessed woman on the verge of unraveling. She refused to accept that their relationship was over. When Travis pulled away, she pushed harder. When he ignored her calls, she bombarded him with voicemails. When he blocked her from his social media accounts, she found ways to break in. Friends began warning Travis that Jodi was dangerous, that she was watching him, following him, creeping into his life in ways that were deeply disturbing. But Travis, despite everything, continued to let her back in. Jodi moved from California to Arizona, settling just a short drive from Travis's house. She told him it was a fresh start, but those closest to Travis knew it was a desperate attempt to stay close to him. She would show up at his house uninvited, let herself in, and sometimes even crawl into his bed at night. It wasn't love anymore. It was control, possession. Despite knowing he needed to stay away, Travis struggled with guilt. He still cared for Jodi, but he didn't love her. She had become a part of his past, but she refused to accept that she wasn't a part of his future. And every time he entertained the idea of keeping her in his life, he fed her obsession just a little more. Then, in May 2008, everything came to a head. Travis was preparing for a big trip to Cancun, Mexico. It was supposed to be a getaway with friends, an escape from the chaos that had been his life with Jodi. And more importantly, he was taking another woman with him, a beautiful, intelligent, and kind woman named Mimi Hall. Unlike Jodi, Mimi was someone Travis could see himself marrying. She was everything Jodi wasn't: stable, confident, and emotionally secure. When Jodi found out about Mimi, something inside her snapped. She had spent the last 2 years molding herself into the woman she believed Travis wanted, yet he was choosing someone else. All of her sacrifices, her relentless pursuit, her desperation, it had been for nothing. She wasn't going to be the one in Cancun. She wasn't going to be the woman Travis built his life with. And most of all, she wasn't going to be the woman he loved. In the days leading up to Travis's murder, Jodi's behavior became increasingly erratic. She dyed her hair dark, rented a car, and began making plans for a road trip. She told friends she was heading to Utah to visit another man, an alibi she meticulously constructed to cover her real intentions. But her true destination was never Utah. It was Travis's house. On June 4th, 2008, Travis Alexander would take his last breath. Jodi was on her way, and she had already decided, if she couldn't have him, no one could. June 4th, 2008 started like any other day for Travis Alexander. He was at home in Mesa, Arizona, going about his routine, unaware that his life was about to end in the most brutal way imaginable. Jodi Arias had been planning this moment. Every move she made, every detail she had considered, it all led to this. She had driven over 1,000 miles, making calculated stops along the way. She dyed her hair brown to alter her appearance, turned off her cell phone to avoid tracking, and even removed her car's license plates temporarily to avoid suspicion. This wasn't a spontaneous crime. This was premeditated murder. When Jodi arrived at Travis's house that evening, it was not a break-in, nor was it an ambush. Somehow, despite everything, Travis let her in. Perhaps he still harbored some residual affection for her, or maybe he simply didn't see her as a threat. Jodi had a way of manipulating him, making him drop his guard even when he knew better. What happened over the next several hours remains partially shrouded in mystery, pieced together only by forensic evidence and Jodi's ever-changing accounts. But what is certain is that Travis never made it out alive. Travis and Jodi spent hours together, taking photos, talking, and, according to evidence, engaging in intimacy. A digital camera captured images of them together, timestamps showing that they were in his bedroom and bathroom throughout the evening. The final photos taken of Travis alive show him in the shower, likely moments before the attack began. Then, the horror unfolded. At some point, something triggered Jodi, and her plan went into motion. Travis was caught completely off guard. He was naked, vulnerable, and confined in a small space when she launched her attack. With a knife in hand, she struck, slashing and stabbing him repeatedly. Travis fought back, desperately trying to escape, but Jodi was relentless. The attack moved from the bathroom into the hallway, where blood evidence showed his frantic attempt to flee. But Jodi didn't stop. She continued stabbing him over and over again until he collapsed. The autopsy would later reveal the shocking extent of her rage. Travis had been stabbed 27 times. His throat had been slit from ear to ear, nearly decapitating him. And in one final act of brutality, Jodi shot him in the head. It was overkill, pure and simple. This wasn't just a murder, it was a crime of passion, an explosion of all the anger, jealousy, and obsession Jodi had carried inside her. After the murder, Jodi didn't run out of the house in a panic. She didn't leave in a hurry. Instead, she meticulously covered her tracks. She dragged Travis's lifeless body back into the shower, likely trying to wash away evidence. She deleted the incriminating photos from the camera, but what she didn't realize was that digital forensics could recover them. She even went as far as to put the blood-soaked camera in the washing machine, hoping to destroy any remaining evidence. Then, she simply left. She drove away from Mesa, disposing of the gun and other evidence along the way. She resumed her carefully crafted alibi, discontinuing her trip to Utah as if nothing had happened. Along the way, she even flirted with another man, laughing and smiling as if she hadn't just butchered someone she once claimed to love. For 5 days, no one knew what had happened to Travis. His friends grew increasingly worried when he missed important work calls and failed to respond to messages. On June 9th, they decided to go to his house, using a spare key to get inside. What they found was a scene straight out of a nightmare. Blood was everywhere, on the walls, the floors, in the bathroom, down the hallway. And then in the shower, they found him. Travis's body was crumpled, his wounds horrifyingly deep, his life stolen in an act of unspeakable violence. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community. Who could have done this? Who hated Travis enough to kill him so brutally? It wouldn't take long before all eyes turned to one person, Jodi Arias. The discovery of Travis Alexander's body on June 9, 2008, sent shockwaves through his circle of friends and the broader community. The brutal nature of his murder, a combination of stabbing, shooting, and near decapitation, indicated that this was no random act of violence. It was deeply personal, filled with rage, and most importantly, it was premeditated. Travis's friends had no doubt about who might have done this. The name Jodi Arias came up almost immediately when they spoke to the police. They knew about her erratic behavior, her obsessive tendencies, and her refusal to let Travis move on. She had been following him, breaking into his accounts, and showing up uninvited. To them, it seemed obvious. Jodi had killed Travis. But at first, investigators had to build their case carefully. They had no immediate proof that Jodi was in Arizona at the time of the murder. Her alibi placed her in Utah visiting another man, and on the surface, she seemed cooperative and composed. However, the more police dug into her story, the more inconsistencies they found. The investigation begins. Detectives quickly piece together Travis's final days. Through phone records, text messages, and witness testimonies, they learned that Jodi had been in contact with Travis just before his death. But the most damning evidence came from inside his own home. The crime scene was a bloodbath, but within the chaos, detectives found something invaluable: a digital camera that had been tossed into the washing machine. Though Jodi had tried to destroy it, forensic experts were able to recover deleted photos. What they found was chilling. The camera contained images of Travis and Jodi together on June 4th. Some were intimate, taken in his bedroom. The last photos showed Travis in the shower, moments before he was killed. Then, there were unintentional photos, blurry, dark, but horrifying. One captured Travis bleeding on the floor. Another appeared to have been taken accidentally as his body was being dragged. Jodi had been at the crime scene. There was no denying it now. Police arrested Jodi Arias in California. She initially seemed calm and cooperative, but as detectives pressed her, her story began to unravel. And then, the lies began. At first, Jodi claimed she had nothing to do with Travis's death. She said she hadn't seen him in months and was nowhere near Arizona at the time. But when confronted with the undeniable evidence, her own pictures placing her at the scene, she changed her story. Now, Jodi said she had been there, but she hadn't killed Travis. Instead, she claimed that two masked intruders had broken into the house, attacked them both, and murdered Travis while she barely escaped with her life. She painted herself as a terrified victim who had fled out of fear, too scared to go to the police. But detectives didn't believe a word of it. There were no signs of a break-in, no evidence of anyone else being present, and Jodi herself had no injuries consistent with an attack. Her second lie failed, so she came up with a third. Months later, after sitting in jail and realizing her previous stories weren't working, Jodi changed her narrative again. This time, she admitted to killing Travis, but she claimed it was in self-defense. She said Travis had become enraged, attacking her, forcing her to fight for her life. According to her, he had been abusive, and she had no choice but to kill him. But there was one major problem with this story: the crime scene. Travis had been stabbed 27 times, his throat had been slit, and he had been shot in the head. This wasn't an act of self-defense, it was overkill. The level of violence, the attempt to destroy evidence, and the inconsistencies in Jodi's claims made it clear she wasn't a victim. She was a cold, calculated killer. The public's fascination. As news of the case spread, the media became obsessed with Jodi Arias. She was young, attractive, and intelligent, which made her a rarity among female murder suspects. The press latched onto the case, portraying it as a twisted love story turned deadly. Jodi herself played into this fascination. She gave interviews from jail, speaking in a soft, almost flirtatious manner, as if she were a misunderstood woman instead of a murder suspect. She claimed that no jury would convict her because she was innocent. She smiled for cameras, played with her hair, and acted as though she were the star of a movie rather than a woman accused of a gruesome killing. But behind the scenes, detectives and prosecutors were building an airtight case against her. They had her own photos, her DNA, her lies, and her attempts to manipulate the narrative. They were ready to take her to trial, and the world was about to witness one of the most sensational murder trials in recent history. Jodi Arias had spent years obsessing over Travis Alexander, refusing to let him go. Now she was about to become one of the most infamous killers in modern crime history. By January 2013, Jodi Arias' trial had become a media spectacle. The brutal murder of Travis Alexander, the twisted love story, and Jodi's shifting lies captivated the public. News networks covered every detail, and Jodi, eager for attention, granted multiple interviews from jail. But inside the courtroom, she was no longer in control. The evidence was overwhelming, and the prosecution was ready to expose her web of deception. The prosecution's case, Maricopa County Prosecutor Juan Martinez was relentless in his pursuit of justice for Travis Alexander. He presented a meticulously built case proving that Jodi's actions were premeditated murder, not self-defense. Martinez outlined the overwhelming evidence. Jodi's alibi had changed multiple times. She had staged a burglary at her grandparents' home to steal a .25 caliber gun, the same type used to shoot Travis. She rented a car, turned off her phone, and removed her license plates to avoid detection. She attempted to destroy evidence, including a camera containing images of Travis's final moments. The level of violence, 27 stab wounds, a slit throat, and a gunshot, was far beyond self-defense. Prosecutors argued that Jodi meticulously planned the murder. She couldn't accept Travis moving on, so she ensured he never would. They played the recovered camera footage, showing Travis's final moments in the shower. Then, they displayed blurred images of his lifeless body, proving Jodi was at the crime scene. Jodi's defense team had a nearly impossible task. Their client had lied repeatedly, and the evidence against her was damning. But they stuck to her final story, that she killed Travis in self-defense after enduring years of abuse. Jodi took the stand in her own defense, speaking softly and portraying herself as the real victim. She claimed Travis had been emotionally and physically abusive, and that she acted out of fear for her life. Over 18 days of testimony, she attempted to manipulate the jury, but her performance only raised more doubts. She was evasive under cross-examination, contradicting herself multiple times. Her calm demeanor while describing the gruesome killing disturbed many. Then came Prosecutor Juan Martinez's turn. He aggressively dismantled her story, exposing her inconsistencies and forcing her to admit to her numerous lies. He proved she had been obsessed with Travis, stalking him, hacking his accounts, and refusing to let him go. The most infamous moment of the trial came when Jodi was asked if she preferred the death penalty over life in prison. Previously, she had smugly claimed, "No jury will convict me." Now she backtracked, saying she wanted to live. The contradiction was glaring, reinforcing the prosecution's argument that Jodi was a manipulator who would say anything to save herself. After months of testimony, the jury deliberated for days. On May 8, 2013, they reached a unanimous decision. Jodi Arias was found guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom erupted in a mix of emotions. Travis's family sobbed in relief, while Jodi barely reacted. The woman who once believed she could outsmart everyone had finally lost control. Now she faced the possibility of the death penalty. But the legal battle wasn't over yet. Next came the sentencing phase. Would Jodi Arias receive the ultimate punishment? With Jodi Arias convicted of first-degree murder, the next phase of the trial focused on her sentencing. The jury now had to determine whether she would receive the death penalty or life in prison. For Travis Alexander's family, justice had been served with the guilty verdict, but they still had to endure more legal proceedings before the final decision was made. In the aggravation phase, the prosecution had to prove that Jodi's crime was especially cruel, heinous, or depraved, criteria necessary to justify the death penalty under Arizona law. Juan Martinez, unwavering in his determination, presented the brutal details of Travis's murder once again. Medical examiners described the extreme pain Travis must have endured. The sequence of wounds, first a deep stab to the chest, then additional stabs, followed by a gunshot to the head, showed a prolonged, torturous attack. The jury listened as Martinez painted a horrifying picture of a man fighting for his life against a relentless killer. When the jury returned their verdict, they unanimously agreed. Jodi Arias had murdered Travis Alexander in an especially cruel manner, making her eligible for the death penalty. The defense now had to present mitigating factors to persuade the jury to spare Jodi's life. Jodi herself took the stand once more, attempting to convince the jury that she had value as a human being and should not be executed. She spoke about her aspirations to help others in prison, promising to teach Spanish and sign language. She even suggested starting a book club and fundraising efforts for domestic violence victims. Her tone was self-serving, as if she were applying for a job rather than facing judgment for a brutal murder. Travis's family, however, delivered powerful victim impact statements. His siblings spoke through tears about the deep emotional wounds Jodi had inflicted on their family. They expressed their agony, knowing that Travis's final moments had been filled with terror and suffering. The contrast between Jodi's emotionless plea and the family's raw grief was striking. Despite the overwhelming evidence and the Alexander family's heartfelt statements, the jury could not reach a unanimous decision on the death penalty. Arizona law required a unanimous vote, and since they were deadlocked, a new jury was brought in to determine her fate. The retrial of the sentencing phase dragged on for months, further prolonging the suffering of Travis's loved ones. But once again, the second jury could not reach a unanimous decision on the death penalty. Because of this, the final decision fell into the hands of Judge Sherry Stevens. On April 13, 2015, she sentenced Jodi Arias to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Though Travis's family had hoped for a death sentence, they took solace in the fact that Jodi would never walk free again. Jodi Arias was sent to the Arizona Department of Corrections, where she was assigned to Perryville Prison. Behind bars, she continued to seek attention, giving occasional interviews and attempting to portray herself as a misunderstood victim. Despite her claims of remorse, she never truly took responsibility for the horrific nature of her crime. Over the years, she has remained a controversial figure, drawing both supporters and detractors. However, public interest in her case eventually waned, leaving her to live out the rest of her life in a prison cell. The murder of Travis Alexander and the trial of Jodi Arias remain one of the most infamous true crime cases in recent history. The case highlighted issues of domestic violence, media sensationalism, and the psychology of obsession and control. For Travis's loved ones, his memory is preserved not by the horrific crime that ended his life, but by the joy and kindness he shared with others. His family continues to honor him, working to raise awareness about domestic violence and the devastating consequences of toxic relationships. Jodi Arias, once desperate for fame and control, now lives in obscurity. Her story serves as a cautionary tale about the dark consequences of obsession, manipulation, and unchecked rage. Though justice was served, the loss of Travis Alexander remains a painful reminder of a life cut tragically short. We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments section below. And if you found this story insightful, please subscribe and leave us a like. We would really appreciate that.